Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. And of course, congratulations on your admission to NYU. My name is Camille, and I work on the marketing and communications team in the Division of Enrollment Management. And I'm so excited to welcome you to our event today, which is part of our Your Future in Focus series. So today's session is all about humanities and the social sciences. So you will be in the front row for a fireside chat between a current NYU student and an NYU alum who is currently working in the field. And really our hope for today is that not only will you learn a little bit more about NYU, but you'll have a deeper understanding of how all of NYU's resources and the support of NYU's amazing, incredible faculty and staff really work together to help students leverage their unique skills and talents to secure their future. Before we dive into our conversation, I did want to share a few housekeeping reminders with you. So please note that all attendees will be muted for the duration of our event today, but we absolutely would love for you to join in on the conversation. So if you have any questions for us, please drop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We have some staff behind the scenes ready to answer your questions, and we'll also be posing some of your questions to our panelists today. Our second tip is just that we won't cover any admissions or financial aid information, but I imagine you do have some of those questions, and we have a ton of resources for you. So you can visit our website, you can give us a call, you can email us. Our staff is ready and waiting to help you with all of those questions or concerns that you might have. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to Admissions Ambassador Gabriel Avalos and our special alumni guest, Imogen Fordyce. And with that, I will turn it over to them to get us started with our conversation.
Hi, everyone. Go ahead, Gabe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel. I use he, him pronouns. I'm currently a junior at NYU, and I'm double majoring in politics and media, culture, communication. And I'm originally from Cerritos, California.
Hi, everyone. My name is Imogen. I'm a recent graduate from the class of 2020 from NYU. I studied international relations in the College of Arts and Science. I use she, her pronouns. I am originally from the UK, and since graduating, I've been working at the UN Agency for Sexual and Reproductive Health and their fundraising wing. So yeah, really excited to talk to you all today.
Same here. And to get things started, I think it's kind of fitting to start off from the very beginning. So could you kind of tell us about what your journey to NYU kind of looked like and what ultimately drew you to starting here at NYU?
Sure. So everyone in this call is about a million steps ahead of where I was when I decided to come to NYU, because I never visited the campus. I had never been to New York looking at universities. I applied kind of just looking online, looking at the very resources Camille is talking about, on the website to figure out whether I wanted NYU. I knew I wanted a city. I knew I wanted a global environment. I knew I wanted to study international relations, and that all fit as part of my goal. But other than that, all I knew I was looking for was a university with opportunity. So I applied to many, and of the ones I got into, I had this gut feeling that maybe NYU was the one. The gut feeling did kind of come from the fact that I was out in a public place when I got my acceptance email, and Empire State of Mind was playing in the background, and I was like, okay, this means I have to go. But I did go really because I knew there would be opportunity available at NYU for me to explore my interests and to explore a new city, and in my case, a new country as well. I can say that it fulfilled all of those things and met every expectation above and beyond what I could have ever dreamed of. So that's really what drew me, was the possibilities that I could take out of the university that I didn't really, coming from the UK, have much scope and knowledge on before actually coming. I just knew that there was something exciting waiting for me and the opportunity to see a new part of the world. So that was why I ended up here. I don't know about you, Gabe, you came from California, so also about 3,000 miles away, just like me. What led you to come and stay at NYU?
Well, definitely some similarities there. Like you, I had never really known too much about NYU, especially when it was time to apply. However, like you said you applied to a ton of universities, and NYU was one of them. And a lot of times people always ask me why I ended up going to New York. They're like, oh, there's so many great schools in California. But at the end of the day, I kind of knew that although I could always go to those schools, that wasn't necessarily right for me. I wanted something that was going to challenge me, not only academically, but just something that could make me grow as a person as well. I kind of looked at the people that I knew at NYU. I had quite a few friends there. And the thing that I kind of saw that was the common denominator amongst them all was that they were all very driven individuals. They didn't exactly know what it was that they were going to do once they graduated, or I don't know, at the end of their story, but they were the type of person that would take advantage of the opportunities that were there. And I kind of saw NYU as providing a ton of those opportunities inside and outside of the classroom. What better way than to study in like one of the greatest cities, if not the greatest? The greatest city on earth, and then just be able to have all these internship opportunities and just, I know it's cheesy to say, but learn inside and outside of the classroom. That's why I decided to do it. And like I said, I just wanted something brand new. And I'm glad to say that I'm kind of here right now.
Yeah, and you're there right now, as you said, and I think we both spoke a lot to the word opportunity. So for everyone listening, I guess we can talk a little bit about the resources that we found really helpful, those opportunities we took advantage of at NYU in the city to get us where we are now. So I don't know if you want to touch on some that you feel have been really helpful, especially during the global pandemic with things changing, going remote, how NYU has supported still growing, both as a student, but heading towards that professional life post-grad. Don't want to stress you out too much, Gabe, but as you get towards it.
I'm definitely already starting to have to think about that. Being a junior, last month of the semester, which is kind of wild to think about. But as I'm kind of just looking at what I've been able to do, I'm really happy that I kind of took advantage of these things. The first thing is just the fact that we have the Wasserman Center, which is our career development center here at NYU. They've been incredibly helpful in finding these internships. One thing that I think not a lot of students kind of consider when choosing a school is the fact that when you're interning somewhere, you're often only able to do so during the summer or during like some long extended break in a very popular city, whether it be New York, Washington, D.C., whatever it is, right? And the cool thing about being in New York means that you're actually able to intern while you're being a student, like during the semester. So after my freshman year, I've been able to intern throughout every semester and during the summer. And one of the cooler opportunities was the fact that we have all these great study away programs, but I ended up going to the NYU Washington, D.C. one, as I kind of wanted to dip my toes in the world of politics. It was really great because all the classes were offered at night. So it was specifically streamlined for you to kind of intern during the daytime. And I would say the connections that I've made with professors have always been great. But right now in the virtual space, I guess a lot of people feel intimidated by that. However, I just have taken full advantage of it, knowing that all our professors are kind of wanting people to visit them even more so than ever. You always kind of hear that professors say not a lot of students come visit them during office hours. And I would say it's probably even more so right now over Zoom. So I've kind of gone out of my way to make those connections. And I will say NYU has been extremely supportive during all of this online learning. All my professors have been recording their classes, so I'm actually able to go back and watch them as I'm studying for a midterm or a final. And overall, I would say that nothing much has changed as we've removed remote. What were kind of the things that kind of, I don't know, stuck out to you with what I said? Maybe some overlap or maybe some opportunities that you took advantage of that kind of stick out in particular?
Yeah, I think the experience you talked about of you get to be a student at NYU, you get to learn, have rigorous academic classes. I learned more about international relations and a plethora of other things at NYU than I ever expected. But one of the most valuable things to me was actually NYU gives you a lot of space to learn outside of that too. So like you said, interning during the school year. I also interned during semesters. I interned at the job I currently have. That was how I ended up in the role I have. And it was only because NYU was in that proximity to the UN and all of their agencies that I could have that internship during the school year, around classes, around being an admissions ambassador, around being a resident assistant. It worked, and NYU set up to let that happen because you are so in and of the city, as we like to say. And I think as well as that, there are spaces within NYU communities to figure out what you want to do professionally in a non-professional way. So a great example I always speak to is when I was an RA, obviously we do great programming in the residence halls for individuals that live there, and we can program on things we're interested in, the students are interested in. And one of the programs I did was the first time I really was taking my interest in reproductive health, reproductive rights, women's rights, and kind of seeing what I knew about it, sharing it with other people. And I did a program around providing like period products to women's shelters in New York with the students that lived on my floor. And to me at the time, that was just a fun program to kind of share something I cared about with the students, but it was really engaging. It ended up winning an award, just to toot my own horn a little. But what it really meant was I had practiced my professional experience before I even knew it was going to become the career field I went into, which it is now. I work in the fundraising reproductive health space, and NYU allowed me to do that. It gave me the funds and the space and the role to kind of test out my interests. And you can do that not just as an RA, you can do that by joining a club, by talking to your professors in office hours. Maybe their academics really interest you and you want to pursue something in their field. Speaking to older students in the clubs you get to kind of test out what really interests you as a future professional in a really kind of non-intimidating way, like you say, finding those spaces that aren't scary to kind of dip your toe into something. So I think for me, that was the best thing about NYU, was I could be a student, but I could be growing in all these other ways at the same time, and they weren't competing with each other. It was all, there was space for it all to happen, and it definitely built me into the role that I currently have post-grad in a very kind of smooth, easy way.
Exactly. And I guess for when you mentioned joining clubs, for myself, like I joined mock trial as soon as like possible when I got here to NYU. And as you said, you're kind of like figuring out what it is that you want to do after, kind of simulating it in a fun way. I'm interested in going to law school. Mock trial is not exactly the same, but it's been kind of like a fun exercise in that. But obviously NYU had a ton of stuff. I mean, you achieved your final goal, which was, or the ultimate goal in getting the job right out of graduation. But did you always have interest in the field that you're working in, or what exactly was it that kind of initially sparked that?
I didn't always know. I mean, I'm sure in my NYU essay, I wrote that I was interested in the university because it was close to the UN as an international relations student. That was kind of all I understood, was that the UN was a global organization. I liked global politics, and therefore that was why I wanted to come to NYU. So very vague. But then when I got to NYU, I was able to start, like you say, joining clubs and talking to people about what I cared about in international relations, and also taking classes that covered different scopes within global politics. And I kept finding myself coming back to a real care for women's health, for the fact that if you empower women, you're empowering the world, and for reproductive health. So that was kind of a personal passion for me. It was coming up in my academics, it's coming up in my personal life. And then the fundraising aspect of my role, I actually got through interning during school. My freshman year, my RA interned at a human rights organization and suggested I interned there too. And I applied and I interned, and I had never worked in fundraising before, but it was a really formative experience for me. And again, I just tried it because why not? You're at NYU, you get all these semesters, 8 semesters typically, where you could be interning if you wanted to. So I was like, hey, I'll start with this and then we'll see. But it stuck. I really liked it, and I liked how it combined kind of a lot of my skills. So then the two pieces existed separately. I was interested in reproductive health. I was interested in fundraising. I wrote my thesis on how international relations was intertwined with women's health. And then I was interning at the same time at a place that combined the two, where I was working in fundraising for reproductive health. So it was a step-by-step process, and NYU's different factors fed into it: my classes, my club activities, and my intern activities. But it took all 4 years to get there. It was only senior year that it really all came together. So I didn't know where I was going when I got to NYU, and I figured it out along the way. Alternatively, I have friends who took a straight line. They knew from day one what they wanted to do. They joined every club that fit it, and they met their goal too. So you can go about it both ways. But yeah, I kind of took it piece by piece to get to where I am now. What about you, Gabe? You're in it right now. Are you thinking about what you want to do after you graduate, and what's kind of getting you there?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, definitely starting to think all about that. I mentioned potentially going to law school. However, as I've kind of just, I don't know, taken classes, right? And especially when I went to DC, I took a class called The Politics of Public Policy. after kind of figuring out what that even was about, I've now realized that I might want to go to grad school, get a master's in public policy. I'm still all figuring it out. It just determines as to what the best path is for me. And also when it comes to law school, I'd probably take a gap year. I'm not necessarily ready to take the LSAT right now. But in terms of why it was that I kind of entered the field, I've always just had like a passion for, I don't know, like social justice and just, I don't know, just trying to figure out a way for everyone to get the equality that they deserve, especially here in the United States, but also like worldwide. And I would say one of the coolest things is that NYU and being in New York has really solidified that for me. You hear a lot of times people will change their major multiple times. However, I've kind of always known this is what I wanted to do. And even more so, I feel like this is exactly the spot that I want to be at. And it really just is because you're learning about things not only from sitting in the classroom, but from the events that are going on around you. There's a lot of rallies that happen in Washington Square Park, for example, where our school is located. I remember different political candidates for the presidential elections were showing up in the park giving rallies. That was like a really cool experience. And I would just say, one of my favorite classes actually I took freshman year, and it was called Writing New York City. And our professor would have us go out into the city and write about the topics that we cared about, but it always had to be about or through a New York City perspective. And I kind of wrote a paper about gentrification and how it was affecting like older dance venues from like the 70s through the 90s. So it was kind of like a fun project. I worked on like dance music from back in the day and how those venues just don't exist anymore and how they're becoming luxury apartments. So I kind of got to fulfill like certain I got to combine both my passions in like media, but also politics as well. And I would definitely say that that has really solidified the path I want to go in. So like I said, I'm just going to keep it open right now, but maybe I get a master's in public policy.
Nice. You said something perfect about combining your passion for media and politics. So you're a double major, Gabe, which is not something I ever forayed into. I did international relations and I minored in French, and that was a lot of coursework already. So I'm interested how you found being a double major. It sounds like it is offering you that intertwining of things you care about, but how's that course load been? And have you been able to find support in doing that as well as pursuing your professional interests and your personal interests as well?
Well, it definitely can be daunting at first. However, if you know it's something that you want to do, like when I'm giving tours at NYU, that's like one of the most commonly asked questions, right? Like, how do I double major? And the thing I always tell everyone is you have to go to your academic advisor ASAP, and they'll kind of lay out your whole academic path in order to get both of those degrees. But I would say just really look at summer terms or J terms, January term. This past summer, when it was all online, I decided to take 4 classes, and that kind of like put me on path to like perfectly graduate at the time that I wanted to. I figured I wasn't really doing much during the pandemic. I had no other plans, so I kind of knocked that out. But I would say, as long as you have a plan, just make sure that you do it. As long as you're disciplined and it's something that you know that you want. It isn't for everyone. So like you said, you have a minor. A lot of my friends have minors, and I honestly sometimes I've kind of considered just getting a minor as well. But now I'm a little bit too close to kind of justify just getting the minor. So I might as well just like power through it. But I will say, as soon as you talk to your advisor, they'll kind of map it out for you. There's cross school advisors. So you'll have your advisor in one school. However, the cross school advisors are specifically geared towards looking at double majors, the path towards that. So it really just is you reaching out and getting the help, because that's one thing I learned early on is that when you get to college, when you're in university, it's okay to ask for help. Not everything's kind of just gonna be given towards you, to you. So it's good for you just to go and kind of reach out and do it. And everyone's always helpful. Everyone wants to lend a helping hand. So I would say NYU's kind of helped me along the way.
Yeah.
And I kind of mentioned like taking those 4 classes during the pandemic wasn't something that I anticipated. What were some things about the pandemic that kind of, I don't know, came your way and maybe changed your trajectory or just changed the way you saw things? How has the pandemic kind of influenced your outlook on things?
I graduated in it. So I think that question is perfect for me because it changed everything and it changed nothing in some ways. And NYU helped nothing change because it kept me in touch with my friends. It kept me in touch with my professors. We pivoted quickly. It taught me to be flexible, adaptable to any situation, and to kind of push forth with my goals no matter what. To push forth, in my case, for continuing to try and find a job post-grad, to applying to the job I currently have and starting that job all remotely. NYU was there, my advisors, my classmates all had my back, and I similarly had theirs to take it through. And I think that kind of wraps us nicely into the advice I would give to students coming into NYU is to not be scared to give anything a try, to know that we've lived through a very, very interesting time in our lives, and we have challenged ourselves in ways we never would have expected. And NYU is another place that's going to challenge you in ways you never expected, but it's going to offer you a million ways you can challenge yourself. And I suggest you do it. That was how I figured out exactly who I wanted to be. I got what I believe is my dream job right now that combines everything I wanted, because during my time at NYU, I took that time to test the waters, to go to classes and sign up for classes that were going to teach me something new, to try the internships that I had no idea about, but could possibly be something I wanted to pursue, and to talk to people, other students especially, who had had experiences I hadn't had the chance to try yet, interning, clubs, being an ambitions ambassador, being an RA, and hearing their experiences, because it only fulfilled me and taught me more about what lay kind of ahead for me at NYU as I went through. So definitely be excited that you have faced some challenges already in coming class of 2025, and you will face more, but in the best way possible, I think, at NYU. Gabe, as someone who's still there, do you have any advice for the current students as they prepare to enter and be your classmate in a few months' time?
Well, hopefully, I hopefully they do take that advice, because I remember getting that and I really did take it to heart, and it was something that really helped me out. Like you said, I really just do recommend trying everything there is. A lot of times you'll hear a lot of people bring up it's such a big school, it's kind of hard to find community. You know what? I actually hadn't really visited NYU until after I had been accepted. So when everyone told me the campus doesn't exist, I really took that and I really just like believed it wholeheartedly. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna go to a school that doesn't have anything, you know? But once I visited, I found out that it's a lot more centralized than what I was made to believe, and that there really is a community there. It's just all around the park. But with that in mind, knowing that it's a big school, it's not a traditional school, taking advantage of just all the clubs that are being offered is probably like my biggest piece of advice, because it'll help you find that community. You mentioned the ambassadors, you mentioned being an RA. Those are all little micro communities within NYU. And I would say that's probably going to be your biggest support system. You know, you have your academic advisors, but they're just there normally for your academics. But outside the classroom, when it comes to just outside of NYU things, you want to have a good support network, a good group of friends. And that's really only going to happen if you make that effort and go out there and find your people, right? And once you join these clubs, you're going to find these like-minded individuals that really will be, I want to say, the defining feature probably of your NYU experience, because it's great to kind of I don't know, like to go to a small school and have that, like, everything's a little bit easier. But I would say that's one thing that I wanted about NYU that would make me grow as an individual. And I think just having that there, being in the big city and kind of having to go out of my way to do so, really made me I yeah, I would say it just made me grow up a little bit faster, you know, made me a little bit more independent. So that would be my biggest piece of advice: join as many clubs as possible. Don't be afraid of making friends, honestly, because everyone that I've always met has always been in the same boat. They wanted to kind of interact in that way, and it's really helped me out.
For sure.
Incredible. I love the advice that both of you gave. You know, just it's clear that you both took your own advice and took advantage of really everything that NYU has to offer. And I hope everyone in our audience really takes that to heart, whether you end up at NYU or not. I think that's really, really good advice for those who are, you know, getting ready for their next chapter, you know, entering the world of higher education. So speaking of taking advantage of resources, Gabe, you spoke a little bit to this before, but I would love to hear if either of you found any support or like mentorship in our staff or faculty while you were here at NYU. Imogen, do you want to kick us off?
Gabe mentioned the Wasserman Center. They are so helpful. The Career Development Center. I would recommend freshman year, when you have a little bit more time on your hands, going to Wasserman and getting yourself set up with an incredible resume. From day one, you can talk to them also about cover letter formats, interview formats, but if you have a resume format good to go during freshman year, all I've done since then is update mine to this day, and it has stood me in good stead. And it was because Wasserman helped me tailor it for my industry. They helped me tailor it for my interests, and you can go back as many times as you like. So anytime I had a big job or internship interview coming up when I was applying to be an admissions ambassador, all those things, I would go and I would say, I have this coming up. Can you help me prepare? And they would sit down with me. They'd look through the resume. They would talk to me about my interview techniques. And they were really helpful. So they were great mentors for me. And then as an international student, an office that was hugely important to me was the Office of Global Services. And as an international student, I can't stress enough to take every opportunity you have to learn from them. The visa process can be scary coming into college, so they'll help you with that. And it can also be very scary going out of college, which was something I was going through. And they really supported me in getting that post-college part of my student visa sorted, and preparing for that well in advance, so I understood everything I needed. And yeah, so those two offices were for me hugely important and not to be slept on. You should be going to them both as much as you can.
I love that. Gabe, do you have anything to add there?
Definitely, everything that was just mentioned is something that I found to be true, but also the professors that are actually just there, they really want to help you outside of class as well, especially when it comes to getting a job or an internship. In my experience, I've had many professors over the past year, and one of my professors in particular actually said, after this class is over, I'm going to give each of you a call and I'm going to kind of check in on what you're doing and I'm going to put you in the right direction, you know? And he really, I think when we were taking this class and we were writing these papers, he could really tell what each of our passions were, it was in particular that we were interested in. So he really made a point that I'm not just teaching you for this class, for this grade. I'm really trying to put you in a position where you're able to kind of work in a field confidently after you graduate. So that was like a business and political marketing class. It was like it combined like politics and business in it all. And he kind of just wanted to kind of, I don't know, help us out in the best way possible. So I would just say establishing those connections, being able to go back and ask for letters of recommendation has always been something that I've felt comfortable with after establishing those connections. And then just knowing that when I went to DC in particular, we had one professor who basically had like the whole phone book of everyone in DC, and he was always bringing in these guest speakers. He was taking us on field trips into these offices that we would never have been able to go in had it been any other day, or had we been with any other person, you know, on our own. And I would say that he really opened up some doors for all of us. And I know some of my classmates are now interning at these organizations only because he opened up those doors for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it really just, what both of you said really speaks to care and the attention that the faculty and staff really give to students while they're here, especially just trying to make sure that they're set up for the future, which I think surprises people because NYU is such a big place. So it's really great to hear that both of you have had some really great support along the way. So we're going to take a couple of questions from our audience. So if you're out there and you have a question for Gabe or Imogen, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. So our first question is, I guess both of you can answer. How do you, or how did you, balance time between all the things that you were involved in, from your internships, your class, your friends, and your social life? How did you all juggle it all?
Ooh, that's tough. It is a juggling act. Google Calendar, iCal, whichever one's your preference, will save your life. A journal. Just make sure you have it all down in one place. Your deadlines for class, your deadlines for work, and your deadlines for social life too, when you're going to have some fun, because that's important as well. Gabe and I talked a lot about kind of taking every opportunity and grabbing at everything whilst you can at NYU, but you also need to give yourself the energy to be able to do that. So prioritizing that time to look after yourself as a student is really important. And then also let people know so they know what you're accountable for and also understand what else is going on in your life. So Camille was actually my boss back in college, and I would let Camille know what else I had going on, that I had an internship and what that meant for when we could meet and all of these things. And I would also let my friends know, hey, I have this, so if I can't hang out, this is why. And I also want you to check on me and make sure I'm resting when I say I'm going to rest, kind of thing. So make yourself accountable by getting all the deadlines in one place just so you don't lose anything, and then get your community at NYU, which can be both your professional academic community and your personal community, to understand what's going on and kind of share the responsibility with you to make sure you're all aligned on what's happening in your life. And that worked for me in some very busy periods, especially my senior year. So it got me through to the end.
Oh, that's amazing. Gabe, how about you? How did you balance everything? How do you balance everything?
Well, Imogen kind of mentioned keeping that line of communication with your friends, with your professors, with a boss, in terms of just letting them know what's going on. That's definitely something that has helped me a long way. Right now, I found that all my professors are kind of offering up extensions on work. I haven't really, only once I've had to take one on, but just that kind of showed me that they're really just aware, they're cognizant of the fact that we do have a lot going on. In the pandemic, we're sitting on Zoom all day for class, and then we have to sit in front of our laptops again for more homework. And they really are aware of the fact that there's a lot going on. So I would say they've been very open to kind of helping us out with that. But when that isn't the case, I definitely just try to make sure that I set up time to do everything on its own, uninterrupted. So my fun time, my own free time, I kind of get that out of the way. That way, when I'm working on something, I don't feel like, oh, I didn't have, like, I just feel like I'm in the proper mindset for everything. I'm not thinking about the next activity or something else that I want to do. And then also, in particular, freshman year, I would actually go to like certain museums. Like I would go to the Met to actually like do my homework. And I would like do that because it kind of put me like in a different mindset in a way, maybe more motivated for work. But also, if you just go to like a library or like the downstairs resource or the like the lounges in the residence halls, that kind of puts you in a different mindset as well. If I'm working in my residence hall like room, I feel like I just want to like work on other stuff, you know. But if I'm in a different location, it kind of just changes my frame of mind, and I'm able to tackle things on my schedule, and it just works out.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great advice from both of you. I hope y'all out there take that to heart. Question from our audience again, have either of you been involved in any research at NYU? And if you were, how did you find that experience? Maybe you have some friends that were doing some research while you were, while they're studying at NYU.
I can speak to that. I did do research. I wrote a senior thesis for international relations, which was heavily research focused, heavily data focused, which was a challenge for me. The social sciences obviously is a combination of kind of that art side and the data side. And the data side of the thesis was heavy and the research side was heavy, but it was fascinating to me. I think I mentioned that my thesis was on how US foreign policy affected women's health and reproductive health internationally. And it involved collecting a lot of data from a lot of different sources. It took an entire year, my whole senior year. But it was completely worth it. NYU has amazing research opportunities. So you can start as a freshman doing research. And not only can you get involved, professors will often offer opportunities. There's a portal where you can see other professors who are offering opportunities, even if they're not your own. And then in the academic settings, like doing your thesis, you can research too. And you can get funding for it. So I was part of something called Presidential Honors Scholars in the College of Arts and Science. And they were really keen for us to do research from freshman year. You can get a START grant in your freshman and sophomore years, which is funding to do research. And then junior and senior years, you can get a Dean's Undergraduate Research Fund grant, a DERF grant. And I applied for that for my thesis. It paid for all the data technology I needed. It paid for any library access I needed. So it didn't cost me a penny to write this huge document. And it was extremely challenging, but it's the piece of work I'm most proud of that I did at NYU. And the best thing is I could have been doing stuff like that since freshman year if that was really my passion. So yeah, research is definitely out there at NYU and you can get involved at all levels. So I recommend it if you get the opportunity during your 4 years.
Yeah, I love that. And again, the support comes back, you know, whether you're doing research, for a job, there is support, and NYU doesn't just like leave its students out there, to dry. So another question from our audience. So Gabe, I think you can take this one. How did you choose your major? Seeing that there's so many different ways to go with your majors, I should say. There's so many different ways to go, especially in the humanities and the social sciences. How did you decide on those particular ones?
Well, like I mentioned, I had always kind of been interested, I guess, like from a distance, certain justice issues, whether it be criminal justice or environmental justice. And the politics major is a lot of theory. You do like get some history, but it really just is like figuring out how these things even come to be. I mentioned I'm interested in getting a master's in public policy. I don't necessarily, and that's for those of you who don't know, that's more just looking at how certain policies, right, certain laws kind of come to be and how to actually implement them, looking at who the stakeholders are and what like the process is for that. I wasn't necessarily in that mindset before I entered NYU. It's only after those classes that I got into that. So I would say the politics major really kind of set me up for understanding the fields themselves. And then also I double majored with MCC, Media, Culture, and Communication, because I kind of wanted to combine the both in the sense that I want to get into political communications, whether it be PR for different elected officials' offices or different nonprofit organizations. When you interact with I don't know, a nonprofit like voting rights organization, for example, like on Twitter, like someone's actually doing that, someone's running it. People are actually putting those messages together. And that's something that I've always been interested in. I like public speaking and I kind of like, I don't know, messaging, So combining those both kind of seemed like the best fit. And definitely now that I'm nearing the end of my time at NYU, I'm happy that I made that decision.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Gabe. All right, so kind of switching gears a little bit to talk about some internship experiences and professional experiences. Imogen, there's a couple questions about your time with the UN. So how did you talked a little bit about this before, but if you can give us a little bit more detail about what it's like and how you were able to sort of establish that relationship.
Sure. So the UN is obviously this like crazy global entity that feels very far off and distant, but NYU has this amazing club that if anyone listening is interested, you should join. It's called the United Nations Initiative at NYU, and I joined my freshman year. You are a United Nations Initiative ambassador, and basically the club just organizes for different UN officials, representatives, from permanent representatives to different countries, from people who work at UNICEF or UNHCR, these different agencies at the UN to come and talk to NYU students, and you're the direct liaison between the two. We pick who can come in and who we want to invite, and I did that from freshman year. And it made the whole thing a lot less intimidating. These people were, of course, like the top of their field, but they wanted to share that with us as students. And to me, that was a real eye-opener that the UN isn't just a building that sits on West 34th or East 34th Street and over the river and you never see anyone come in and out. It's actually people who are interested in making the world a more equitable place. And I love learning about that from freshman year in this club. So you can join. It's easy to join. There's no kind of barrier to entry and you can get to meet these incredible people. So I was doing that all through NYU. I was part of the club all 4 years. When it came to interning there, it was actually just a case that I saw an internship posting online. I was looking for an internship my junior summer and I applied to a lot because it's a competitive field. And thankfully, NYU had set me up to have a great resume and to talk about how my in-university experiences related to this internship. And I talked a lot about how I was in UN initiative and I had met individuals from the UN and I cared about it. And I cared about reproductive health and had done these programs at NYU. And then I was able to apply. And I specifically work at the nonprofit that fundraises for the UN Agency for Sexual and Reproductive Health. So they had an internship posting for the summer and I applied and interviewed. I went to Wasserman before I interviewed to prep, and then I went and I thankfully got the internship, and I interned through the summer between junior and senior year, and then I was fortunate enough that they wanted to extend that into the fall and then into the spring, and then very, very luckily into a full-time role after I graduated. So it fell into place. I had this interest in the field, and I found the posting on a site called Idealist, which, just shout out if anyone's a humanities major, it's a great place to find internships, as is Handshake, which is NYU's platform. My roommate found her full-time job on there. She was also in the humanities, so I can vouch for that too. And yeah, so that was how I kind of got to know the UN as a student. And then the internship was just finding that posting, and there's postings all the time. So it's been great to work there. And I think NYU in every way has prepared me for this. They actually have only had NYU interns. They love us so much for like the last 3 years. So they believe in what kind of students NYU produces. And I have to say, I think I was set up for this role more than even I knew, because I'd had time to be kind of a mini professional at college.
I love that the UN was just a part of your journey from your first year and now your post-grad life. That is just incredible to me, and just like, speaks to NYU and the resources and all the ways that you get support. And you get to be challenged a little bit throughout your time. So that is really, really incredible. Well, thank you both so much. Those are all the questions that we have time for today, but we really, really appreciate the conversation, the responses, the advice. Y'all were so engaging to listen to, and I really appreciate you being here. I hope for everyone in our audience that you had a great time with us as well, and had a chance to learn all about NYU and some of the things that you might be able to look forward to as a student. We would love for you to join us at our final event in the series, which is happening on April 28th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be chatting with a current student and an NYU alum about their journeys studying and working in the STEM field. But until then, we encourage you to check out our other offerings on NYU Home Base. You can find some more information about our events happening next week. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Meet NYU on all platforms for even more updates. So with that, thank you all so much for attending. Congratulations again, and we hope to see you in the fall. Thanks so much.